The hype was real. When the Transition Spur launched last year, many very positive reviews and much critical acclaim for the new bike. And after riding it for the last few weeks, well, it lives up to the hype. It really is that good. This is a bike for me that does everything I want. It's fast up the hills, it's highly capable down my favourite trails, just a bike that doesn't hold you back in any way. So we have a full carbon fibre mainframe and swing arm, contributing to a low weight of about 25 pounds for a size large. We've got big 29-inch wheels and 120 millimeters of front and rear suspension via RockShox SID suspension components on this bike. And those are all the boxes you would normally tick on a cross-country race or marathon bike. But the big ace up this bike's sleeve is the geometry, which borrows from bigger travel, enduro and trail bikes, being much slacker and longer than most other cross-country bikes in this suspension travel category. It really proves the case that you can't really define a bike by how much suspension travel it has, because the bike far exceeds that of most other bikes in this category, with the geometry giving you much more capability on your favourite trails. Let me give you a taste of how the bike rides before we go into the frame and component details a bit more. And simply put, it's wicked fast everywhere, and that's what I want from a modern mountain bike. So low weight, the big wheels, short travel helps you out on the climbs, and the geometry really helps you out on the descents. Lets you have fun on the climbs, lets you have fun on the descents, and that perfect package is what I want from a mountain bike. And this is the closest I've got to a bike that does everything so well. It climbs really well, it descends extremely well, and there are very few limits to this bike in any way. So I don't live in the mountains, the climbs aren't massive and the descents aren't massive either. So lots of pedalling involved on rolling, undulating terrain, and the descents quite techy in places, but not the longest. On that sort of terrain, it's super fast on the climbs, it's fast on all the pedalling, traversing sections, and then it's amazing fun on the descents. The geometry, the tyres, all the other components on the bike let you really have a lot of fun on the descents and not hold back where you normally do on a short travel cross-country bike, because they're shorter and steeper and you have to back off a little bit because they are quite sketchy in places. But when you're faced with rock gardens, berm corners and other features, this bike lets you just hit them all full speed and full confidence and just smile all the way down before you hit the bottom, and then spin up the climb again and repeat until you're too tired to keep going. The reason the Transition Spur works so well on my local trails and works so well for me, it's a combination of the low weight and short travel you normally get from a cross-country race bike or marathon bike, but then the features you get from a bigger bike. So geometry, the big tyres, wide handlebar, short stem. It's a magic combination that works really well, and the Transition Spur is one of the best examples of a bike that blends the attributes of a short travel race bike and the attributes of a bigger travel trail bike into a perfect blend. It's a perfect recipe, the perfect mix to make sure you have fun on all your trails, no matter how tame or aggressive they are. It's such a fun bike to ride. The Transition Spur is a really good looking bike with loads of cool details. I love the straight line of the top tube down through the linkage and into the seat stays. Really strong look, gives loads of standard clearance. We still have space for bottle cage, and you fit a nice long drop post as well. The cable and hose routing is a combination of internal for the drop post and rear gear cable, and external for the rear brake hose, which means you can replace it really easily and makes it nice and smooth across the linkage, so no fiddly, complicated internal cable routing, hose routing there to worry about. Post mount disc brakes, a threaded bottom bracket. You can replace the headset with a angle adjust if you need to make it slacker or steeper as well. To save weight at the back of the frame, instead of a pivot at the rear stay like you normally get, horse link or above on the seat stay, they use carbon flex stays, which is a well-proven technology. The carbon flexes along its length, and that replaces the need for a pivot. You can buy a Transition Spur as a frame set and build it yourself, or choose from a number of builds. This one has a SRAM Exo Eagle 12-speed drivetrain, carbon fibre cranks. We have a set of DT Swiss 1700 wheels with Maxxis Recon and Dissector tyres. We have a 1-up carbon fibre 800mm wide handlebar and a race face stubby stem, SRAM GT brakes and a 1-up dropper post and the company's own saddle. And what I like about this bike is the weight is low, 25 pounds for a size large with this spec, which is a long way from the short travel, mid-travel trail bikes, which are 30 pounds plus. Some are nudging 33, 35 pounds in places, which for me personally is just too heavy. I want a bike to be light. I want it to climb well. I want it to feel agile and dynamic underneath me, but I want the geometry, the big tyre, wide handlebar. So when I get to my favourite descent with berms and drop-offs and tight corners, I can have fun and not be held back like I would on a short travel cross-country race bike. You can probably build it lighter if you want to with some carbon fibre wheels, or you can build it a bit burlier with some chunkier tyres. I recommend a better rear tyre for my local trails personally. So you could customise a build to suit your riding or your trails if you want to, but it's a really good kind of base spec to start from. Have I mentioned how fast this bike is? The combo of low weight, stiff carbon frame and efficient suspension that doesn't rely on the lockout helps you pin your favourite trails with a flurry of PRs in your wake. Climbing is as fast as you would expect. The low weight plus the anti-squat in the rear suspension stops it bogging down, but it still reacts well to roots, giving you ample traction. With fewer expended tokens getting to the summit, you've got more in the tank to really enjoy the descent. The adrenaline flows quickly from the moment you get in the power and hit up the first few corners. It turns precisely with command and control. You can easily pump and squash features and carry maximum speed through rougher sections. The Maxxis tyres grip well and the SID fork tracks accurately. The bike isn't easily jostled offline. It's all very calm, planted and secure feeling, which is impressive considering how much suspension travel you have or don't have. You can easily tackle trails that a typical cross-country race bike will be squirming out of contention on. But even with brand new rear brake pads fitted, the G2 brakes simply struggle to keep up with the speed possible on this bike. I recommend a bigger rotor than the 160 fitted as stock. Overall, it's a balanced bike that doesn't feel big or unwieldy. It gets you to the top of the hill with little effort, parties on the way back down, and just keeps you smiling and grinning all the way around your favourite trails. This bike also makes you realise that you can't really define a bike by the amount of suspension travel it has, which the bike industry does so well. Short travel for cross-country racing, big travel for downhill racing, etc. But this bike really blurs the line, because we have the short travel from a cross-country race bike, but the capability, the ride dynamics of a bigger travel trail bike. So it's a bike defined by its geometry, its riding intention, rather than the amount of suspension travel on this bike. The amount of suspension travel I found is more than adequate for my local trails. Most trails in the UK will be fine with 120mm of front and rear suspension that this bike has, especially when it's as well handled as the RockShox SID fork and rear shock. Really well damped, plenty of stiffness from the fork, plenty of adjustment as well. Got a lockout if you need it, but you don't need to use it, just leave it open all the time. It's well composed. So on paper and on trail, the Transition Spur really impresses. But how does it compare to the Yeti SB115 that I reviewed last year, which is a similar short travel bike like this? Well, the Yeti SB15 had quite short and steep geometry, and the longer, slacker geometry of the Spur definitely gives this bike the ace card on the descent. It's much more capable, much faster in rough, rowdy sections, and much more fun. The flip side is though that on quite technical climbs, the length of the bike means it can be a little bit tricky to get around hairpin turns, which is something you get used to and you adapt to. But the Yeti SB115 was perhaps a bit more nimble on very fast technical climbs. The Yeti SB115 also had the advantage when it came to pure suspension performance. This suspension is good, it's efficient, you don't need the lockout lever for climbing, it handles big impacts well, nice progression built into it, but it's not as buttery smooth, as silky plush as the Yeti SB115, which is probably the best suspension of any mountain bike you can currently buy, in my opinion. But when it comes to geometry, this bike has the edge. So I've had a few weeks to ride a bike, but really it only took one ride to realise all the hype around the bike was on point. And it's a bike that delivers huge smiles, huge grins on all sorts of trails. And it is everything I want from a trail bike and nothing more. It's fast on the climbs, it's fast on the flatter trails, the tamer trails, where big, heavier, slacker bikes can be a bit of a handful. But when you get to your favourite descent, when you're faced with berms, drops, rocks, roots and other features, high speed descents, this bike doesn't hold you back in any way. The suspension can cope, the components can cope, the frame can cope. It all copes so well and better. It really is a lot of fun, and I can't think of another bike in this category that really does it so well. There are a few bikes that come close, but I think this bike comes closer to being that perfect one bike to do everything, which for me is the holy grail of mountain biking. A bike I can take to any trail, anywhere in the world, and know I won't be on the wrong bike. But that's what I think. What do you think? Well, let me know in the comment section down below whether this is a bike that floats your boat or whatever short travel trail bike you're looking at for 2021. Okay, that's all for now. Hopefully you enjoyed the review, and if you did, hit that subscribe button up there, other videos to watch down there, and I'll see you all again next time. Thank you so much for watching.